Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
They say ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, isn't that doubly true for a police officer? So you're out in the street one day and you encounter an officer and he says, "Sir, you're violating the law. I'm going to arrest you." You say, "Mr. Officer, I can tell you in explicit detail how I am not violating this law and how if you arrest me, that will be unconstitutional." He says, "Well, pretty much, I don't care. I'm going to arrest you anyway."
There we go. Firearm. Any device designed made to adapt and expel a projectile through the barrel.
Keep reading.
Energy generated by that substance.
Keep reading. Don't mumble.
Any firearm made have integral part folding knife blade.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Thank you.
You got quiet there, Sergeant.
Sir, yeah, I did notice that you stopped reading out loud. Can you tell us the part that you were reading?
Yeah. The definition of firearm.
Okay. What does it say?
And that was Terry Holcomb being arrested at the Texas State Capitol for carrying a black powder pistol, something that is completely legal within the state of Texas. But the Texas DPS, they say, "We don't care. If you just walk out here with your gun, that's not even a gun according to the 1995 law written by Jerry Patterson, we'll arrest you anyway." But it's not just here in Texas. We see this in New Jersey as well. And the cop says, if Obama doesn't follow the Constitution, we don't have to. And he says, Obama just decimated the freaking Constitution, so I don't give a damn. If he doesn't follow the Constitution, we don't have to. And this is a man who's brazenly violating the oath he swore to uphold when he said he would uphold the Constitution. So this is going on all around the United States of America. And even it's gotten to the point now that if you sing in a subway, the police will come and arrest you, even though you tell them that you're not violating any law.
That's what I'm saying. There's people in the fraction of New York. Go upstairs. Woo! Hey, you can't do that. Oh! Woo! Woo!
Rob Dew here from Infowars.com, and I've got a story for you that's inspiring in so many ways. Just watching people stand up for their rights is really something that we need to talk about a lot here, and we do talk about it a lot here, but talk about it and kind of glorify it as an example of what to do when confronted by the police, especially when you know you're in the right. Let's go to the article here out of freethoughtproject.com. NYPD assault arrest musician for playing a song even after verifying he hadn't broken any laws. And there's a link there to the video called Musician Arrested for Singing in the Subway. The man's name's Andrew Colleen. We're going to have him on here in a second. And he's basically just singing for donations in the subway, something you've seen if you've ever gone to New York. You've seen people play with guitars. I've seen people playing with buckets, all kind of stuff. I've seen dance troupes. I mean, it really is a place for people to perform and for these artists to make money when they're not gigging. And a cop comes up and tells him to leave. And he tells him several times. And Andrew, who's gone through this several times, decides he's finally had enough. And he starts reciting the code for the officer to look up and to show that he has the right to be there. So the officer looks up the law, actually reads it on camera.
The following non-transit uses are permitted by the authority. Yes. Provided they do not impede transit activities. Yes. And they are conducted in accordance with these rules: public speaking, campaigning, leaflet, and distribution of non-commercial materials, activity intended to encourage and facilitate voter registration, artistic performances, including the acceptance of donations, solicitation of religious dignitaries that are licensed for the 12 months commissioner are permitted.
So now Andrew is perfectly in the right. We know that. The cop knows that, yet he still proceeds to harass this man. He takes his guitar off, he puts it down, Andrew puts it back on, starts singing again. And then finally he is arrested by, it looks like 2 cops and then another plainclothes cop. So we're seeing the law becoming more encroaching. So what do we have to do? We have to stand up for ourselves. And so that's what Andrew did. They arrested him for 5 hours. And he's been out for a few days. There have been numerous protests due to this. People are tired of it. And it's just one little event that happened on a subway at night somewhere. I mean, this is not anything that's big. It's not the guy standing in front of the tanks in Tiananmen Square. It's just one guy standing up for his rights, and it happened to be shot on a cell phone camera, and now it's got millions of views all over YouTube. And We are joined now by Andrew Killeen, and we'll let him talk about his story as well, and also give him a plug to his music. I've read in different articles that you've been harassed by the cops before. Tell us about some of those experiences, and then why you decided to stand your ground. What made you actually want to do that at that particular point in time?
Yeah, I think it's been fairly regular over I've been busking for almost 6 years now, and it's a fairly regular practice that they'll just ask you to stop. And I've been, I think, stopped about 6 times now. And after the fifth time, in April of this year, I stood my ground similarly to this one, and not quite as firmly. And I ended up with a couple of tickets, one for soliciting for money in the subway, which actually the law they wrote me up for is 1050.6, which is the one that I cite. Although Section C stipulates that you're allowed to have artistic performance with the acceptance of donation allowed. So I got those dropped. The other one was for failure to produce ID upon lawful request, my argument being that the request was not lawful. So after some time, I had some experience with these cases and just fed up with it and wanted to stand my ground.
Well, and if you look at the video, musician arrested for singing in subway, you show great restraint. You're very polite to the officer, but you do stand your ground. You say, I am not going to leave. I'm going to continue playing even after he takes your guitar off once. You put it back on and continue singing. I think you go into a Pink Floyd song. And it's just, you did it exactly the way you should do it, especially if you want to go after the cops later in some sort of lawsuit fashion to educate the cops in that way. But what are your plans to do with this in the future? And I mean, are you going to press charges against the cops? Are you going to go after this officer?
Yeah, I think there has to be repercussions for the actions. I'm fairly confident I'll get the charges dropped. I did get a loitering charge on the way to the precinct. I was riding in the police car with the officer, and he was rather frantically looking through his phone to find something to charge me with. And did eventually find a Depression-era penal law that for loitering in a transit facility for the purposes of entertainment without being otherwise authorized. And I would say that the law that I cite very clearly authorizes my behavior.
And not only the law that you cite, it's the law that he read aloud to everybody there watching they're witnessing this. He reads the law that says you're allowed to do this. It says it in plain English.
Yeah. It's there's a pretty blatant lack of integrity there on his part. Although I do have a modicum of sympathy for him, he is asked to do that. It's sort of a strange thing, I guess, with the reinstated broken windows policy here in New York. He's essentially asked to do something illegal by people higher up, and I don't think he was really prepared for that situation and didn't act in the way that I think most people agree would be acceptable. But it is I can see why he lost his cool. Not that there's any excuse for it.
Yeah, he wasn't prepared for someone who actually knew their rights, who knew the law. You're actually citing the sections and the code number to the law. And he read it aloud, and he still did. It didn't matter because he was being ordered to from above. And we see this in a lot of cases. I was a victim of it myself back in 2009 in Pittsburgh, where there was a 50-person protest, and 1,500 riot cops showed up after the G20 and started rounding people up, including students who were in their boxer shorts just coming out to watch. Why are there militarized police marching around with shields beating on them? So it is something that they are told to do this from higher up. But, we had a case about a year and a half ago, shock video, cop protects First Amendment. It's got over 2 million views on our channel now. And there were some protesters protesting the TSA at the airport. And the media person for the airport was trying to get them arrested and trying to get their ID. And he wanted to make an example out of them. And the cop said, no, they're not breaking any law. I can't even ask them for their ID. And there's someone who could have followed what this guy was saying, but he said no, he followed the Constitution, he followed the law.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's nice to see.
Officers that'll do that.
Right, and then contrasting it today, we had a story on Infowars where a cop's following a group of teens and literally cussing one out. I mean, and that's That's why it's good that we have cameras so we can show this outrageous behavior and then get people disciplined, get them the help they need to understand the law, because it shouldn't be a war between us and the cops. It should be educating the cops and educating the people around us that we do have rights, and we should stand up for them.
Yeah, and that is a big reason why I will be pursuing a lawsuit. Although I have intentions to donate what I assume I will get a settlement out of this. It seems fairly clear. But I live in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, which is an area of New York which has historically been the victim of a lot of police misconduct. And I don't think I'll get that much money, but what I do get, I want to put back into this community in some way. I
know they've had the stop and frisk policy. Have you been a victim of that in New York?
Not to the extent that some people did, although I was arrested actually here in Bed-Stuy. I was riding my bike on the sidewalk from my doorstep to the curb. There's no one on the curb, but I got a ticket for that, and I didn't go to my summons. And then a couple months later, I got a ticket for the exact same thing from my friend's doorstep to the curb. And when they ran my ID, they found I had a warrant, so they took me to central bookings. They were running a warrant trap in the Marcy projects, and everyone uses the walkway. It's the easiest passage from the apartments to the parking lot. The walkway is part of the 2 courtyards that close down at a certain hour after dark, so the officers are allowed to just run anyone's ID who walks through there. And they were just rounding up warrants. It was in December, and it's right before bonuses.
Yeah, and I like how you're using this opportunity as well to educate people on the encroaching police state. You state, as far as a statement, I'd say not to put the blame on the cop. This is a symptom of a much larger problem. It's everyone's responsibility to move our society's values to a mindset where this sort of thing is unthinkable. We need to recognize that we have allowed ourselves to continue to live into a police state. So we are part of the problem by not knowing our rights, by not being educated, by allowing the police and the higher-ups to slowly just encroach on what we could do, just living, basic living. You know, you're riding a bike and they're giving you a ticket for riding a bike. It's pretty ridiculous.
Although I'm optimistic too. I've received hundreds of emails because I say my email in the middle of that video.
Oh yeah.
Just thinking that I want to get the video for evidence, not thinking that this. That it would go viral in the way that it has over the last week. It's been, I was not expecting this.
Was the girl who was filming that, did you ask her to film, or did she just start doing it?
I did. You can hear me at the very beginning. I say, can someone film this? And then they were already filming it. So that was nice.
Yeah, it's very important that we have cameras and that we know how to use them, and then either get the information up as quickly as possible to the web, especially if you're in a situation where there have been cops known to come over and take people's cell phones and delete the video from them, especially in a police brutality case.
Yeah, I've gotten emails from all over the world, really, literally every continent, Egypt, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Morocco, China. Apparently they haven't blocked the video in China yet. I've gotten emails from there, all over Europe and South America.
And there's even been protests. Protests have spawned up in the area that you're from and where you got arrested. People can't take it. They have to speak out, which is good. This is the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially a pretty small, like the actual incident is a fairly small one. It's just someone wanting to play music and sort of an absurd restriction thereof. But I think it speaks to a much larger issue, and a lot of people have really been touched by it, which I think is great. That to see someone stand up and just say no when they're doing the right thing, because we're all taught to obey authority, and when we shouldn't.
Yeah, from a very young age, that is ingrained, and that's part of the public education system. Something that we kind of rail against here. Anything else you want to add, and where can people find your music on the web?
Well, I've been preparing a solo launch, but I wasn't really ready for this to happen right now. But I have a band, Lawrence and Lee. I would say if people are going to check out one thing, Google the Glow video. Lawrence and Lee, it's Lawrence, and Lee, Leigh.
All right, yeah, and I'll put a link to that at the in this YouTube video. I'll put that down there for people to check it out. And you really are an inspiration out there for people who do want to confront the cops. Follow Andrew's direction. He really is an inspiration of knowing the law, remaining calm, taking deep breaths. Obviously, you've had a lot of practice and patience, and just not losing your cool, because once you lose your cool, then they can really bring the hammer down on you, and you won't have as much of a leg to stand on, literally.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I also think it's interesting that Andrew was arrested while singing the song Ohio, a Neil Young protest song that was written in response to the Kent State massacre that occurred, once again by federal troops coming in and oppressing people and actually opening fire on them. You should check that out if you've never heard of the Kent State massacre. So kudos for Andrew and the people going out there protesting this. Here's a couple articles. NYC police looking into arrest of Subway performer. Protest held in support of Subway musician arrested in Williamsburg, which is a section of Brooklyn. And busted Brooklyn Subway busker claims he was tired of cops not knowing performers' rights. So there you go. There's a quick lesson on why you should stand up for yourself, especially when you are in the right, because there's one thing you can't do. You can't stop a man who's in the right because he just keeps on coming. This is Rob Dew with Infowars.com. You can join us on prisonplanet.tv, become a member, and share your username and password with up to 11 people. It's one way to spread the information, help us grow, and just become a participant in this fight for freedom that we're doing every day here at Infowars.com. Thank you.
Well, that's it for the main portion of our show, but stay tuned because after our show tonight, we'll have a special report from Anthony Gucciardi and also Dr. Group, where they ask the question, are crisis actors being used to hype up the Ebola scare? And we'll also have 3 entries from our #Ebola contest, our entries to be judged on Friday, so stay tuned for that as well. Well, that's it. Go to prisonplanet.tv, get yourself a 15-day free trial of the nightly news, the special reports, the rants, and all of it is right there at prisonplanet.tv. I'm Jakari Jackson from the Infowars Command Center, and we'll see you again tomorrow night.
Alex Jones here to tell you about how you can help spread liberty worldwide while also enjoying what I have found to be the best tasting 100% organic coffee on the planet. For more than a decade, my favorite coffee has come from the high mountains of southern Mexico, where the Chiapas farmers grow their unique shade-grown Arabica beans. We have now managed to secure these sought-after beans in a highly customized blend. Discover and try a bag of the Patriot Blend 100% organic coffee at InfoWarsLife.com. This coffee gives you a long, smooth pick-me-up for hours without the headaches and heartburn that so many other coffees give me personally. Hands down, this is my favorite coffee, and it's taken us years to secure connections directly to the Chiapas Mexican farmers. Drop by the site today, order a bag or two, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Available in original or with our immune support infusion blend. You will be supporting a free press, all the while enjoying a truly great tasting cup of my favorite coffee. Available at InfoWarsLife.com.